The 21st argument used against Christianity and the existence of God, found on the website godimaginary.com, is entitled Understand Jesus' Core Message. And the gist of it is what I think is perhaps a good example of a caricature of Christian theology. It starts out, with almost a letter form of Jesus saying, hello, my name is Jesus, I love you so much, I give my life for you, but if you don't bow down and worship me, you go to hell forever, and so on. And it throws in a number of different points on that. I think the way that I'd like to maybe address this point is to address this whole issue of caricature. What we find in this particular argument, as brief as it is an attempted summary of Christianity that is disproportionate, is distortive, that seeks to make humorous what Christians take very seriously. In Christian theology, we take not only the character of Jesus, the sincerity of Jesus, the love of God expressed through Jesus, but also the seriousness of God toward human sinfulness. Both of them are very important truths. Just as I think any parent can relate to this, if we talk about a parent's love for their child, but also that the parent takes very seriously the well-being or the good behavior of their child. So, for instance, if a child does something that's wrong, the child is punished. I assume that a child could caricature the behavior of the parent and say, yeah, you say you love me, but instead you punish me, or you don't let me do what I want to do because you're inconsistent, or you're not. You say that you love, but you really don't. So, in other words, I think what the argument is doing here is it's caricaturing, or it's poking fun at two aspects of the Christian belief about God. That God is both loving, that God cares for His people and cares for human beings, but on the other hand, God also is very serious about human sinfulness and defiance of God and rejection of God. First of all, because it's destructive to ourselves, that sinfulness and turning away from God and choosing not to open ourselves to God is to turn away from our true happiness. And so God treats that, very seriously. To give an example of this in the teachings of Jesus, we find, if you look at the parables of Jesus, you'll find that there are numerous ones that emphasize God's love for sinners, for those who are outcast. Often Jesus was accused of caring too much about those who were the social outcasts. For instance, in the Gospel of Luke, you have a series of parables in chapter 15, beginning with the parable of the lost sheep, where the shepherd has the 100 sheep and one goes away, and the shepherd goes looking for the one lost sheep. And then we have the story of the lost coin, which makes very much the same point. And then finally the parable of the prodigal son, where the farmer has two sons, and one of them insists on leaving home. He's bored with life on the farm, and he wants to go live it up out in the city. And so he goes to the city, and he wastes his income, he wastes his inheritance from his father. And then once he's lost everything and come to the end of himself, he realizes what a mess he's made of his life, and he decides that he'll go back home and plead with his father to be made one of his father's hired hands or servants, because he says, I'm not worthy to be called my father's son anymore. And so when he goes home, he finds that his father comes out, and he's watching for him to come, and he comes out and embraces him and throws a big party and celebration. The other brother is upset because he thinks that the father is over-exaggerating or over-responding to the son coming back home. That son doesn't deserve anything at all. This is an incredibly important part of the teachings of Jesus, is that God's love for the human family is so great, and for His people is so great, that He longs to bring us back to Himself. And Jesus is like God showing the heart of a shepherd who wants to bring his children back to Himself. On the other hand, there are other parables of Jesus that are designed to show us that if we persist in our sinfulness and our defiance of God, then there is a punishment that is coming to us. And as I've explained before, that punishment is one that we fundamentally bring upon ourselves by our refusal to open ourselves to God's invitation to love. I like one illustration years ago that I heard that has stuck in my mind for this, is the idea of, imagine wax. Take a wax candle. If you put it out in the sun, it'll melt. If you take another substance, like, let's say, concrete, and you take the concrete and you pour it out in the sun, it will harden. So one substance hardens when the sun shines upon it. Another substance is softened and melts whenever it comes into the same contact or the same influence of the sun. What's the point? The point here is this, that human beings respond to God's love in different ways. Some people experience the love of God and they reject it, and they thereby harden their own hearts against God's love. On the other hand, there are people who experience God's love and they open themselves to it, and it softens them, and it makes them more pliable, and it opens them to God, and they become conformed to what God wants for them. Now, obviously, the atheist doesn't believe in God, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation or responding to these various points. But I think if you try to put yourself into the Christian way of thinking, into the Christian mindset, you'll see that the idea that God is both love and also experienced as wrath or anger can make some sense, because it depends, the way that we're experiencing God depends very much on what we do in response to God. So one responds to God with a great openness and they experience God's love, and another experiences the same God and they harden themselves to God. And the difference between the two is their free response to God, what they choose to do in response to God's love. Now, again, I know that the atheist is not going to care all that much about Jesus' teachings, and they're not going to care much about my illustration here. My only point is to say that when we try to represent one another's views about things, we should be careful not to caricature them or to make fun of them. We should first try to understand one another and then respond seriously to each other. I know the greatest angry responses that I get from atheists, not only on this YouTube site, but also in personal conversation and in other correspondences that I've had with people, letter correspondences, email correspondence, for a very long time. The most angry responses I get from atheists are when atheists think that I'm misrepresenting what they believe or what they think. Most atheists don't want to be labeled with holding a particular position at all. They want to say, don't tell me what I believe. I choose what I say I believe. I deny the existence of God. I don't find reason to believe in God, but don't try to pigeon me into one way of thinking. They resent being told, this is what you say, or this is what you believe. One of the biggest responses I get from atheists is when I say things like, atheists don't have a foundation for morality or ethics. And they get all angry and say, are you telling me that I can't be a moral person? Who are you to tell me what is morality, or what is right, or what is wrong, or what I believe as an atheist? A number of the responses that I've gotten lately focus on that idea of, you shouldn't tell me what I think. I will say what I think and believe. Well, of course, if an atheist asks for that, and an atheist wants to be treated that way, letting them speak and defend their own position, or express their own position, or define their own terms, certainly the atheist can understand that the Christian deserves the same respect of being able to define their own terms, and to define, proportionate ideas in relationship to each other, that there should be an allowance for the Christian to be able to show how everything fits together. I think what the atheist is doing here, this particular atheist, in a number of different places, is taking Christian theology, making it disproportionate, overemphasizing one thing, distorting another, leaving out important points, and what you end up with is something that looks rather silly, actually, when in fact, if you read any presentation of Christian theology that is respected at all, if you read any presentation of Christianity, it doesn't sound like that at all. Why is that? It's because of this tendency to caricature, to make fun, to distort, to leave out principles that would clarify or qualify various things that are said. So my response to this would be, and by the way, I think that I have a right, and the atheist has a right, to try to speak about things that we understand and to defend our ideas, our beliefs, our understandings of things. I think we all have a right to express what we think. I think the presupposition of that, though, is that we've taken the time to clearly understand one another. If I've taken the time to study and think about these things and I comment on them, that's one thing. It's another thing for me to jump out there and talk about things I know nothing about. I've had a lot of conversations with atheists. I've read a lot of atheist literature. I could pile up a lot of it in front of you now. I spend a lot of time thinking about these things, and I think that I then have a little bit of a background that allows me to make some comments about these things, not to mention my study of Christianity. If the atheist wants to be treated with similar respect, then they owe it to the conversation and to the other person to take the time to clearly understand Christian theology and what we're saying, so that they can appropriately and proportionately and properly represent what they are attacking. And I don't think that that's being done in this particular case.